This three-bean casserole is
Scooby-Doo-Bop-Biddy-Bop-Bop-Bop! I'm so sorry, babe. I hadn't tasted him yet.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Looking forward to, you know.
Don't talk about the ingredients. I know. Yeah.
After, it's just a surprise for your mouth.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time for another comic book review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Chip Zdarsky's Justice League: The Last Ride with Miguel Mendonca on art. This is a difficult comic book to score. There's some real issues with it, but by the end, they might all be kind of sorted out. It might be part of the story and the narrative, but it gets kind of confusing. And I do think there's a couple of narrative choices that Zdarsky uses here, probably for the purposes of time or to hold back some surprises that I don't think really work all that well to kind of hold the narrative back overall. The art in here is pretty good. I'm going to give it like a 3.5 star recommend because I do think the story is going somewhere interesting, but it's not the best work I've seen from Zdarsky. You know, obviously right now he does have that Batman Urban Legends Red Hood story. It's like the main story there. This week's wasn't all that great, but for the most part it's been really good. So I had higher expectations for this, but this is a good comic book. But if you don't go into this thinking that you're going to be seeing like a 5-star classic, because that's not what this comic book is, but it's certainly, you know, it's good. It's just not great. It's all right. So getting into the review, let's talk about the art first. And there's some really, really good action sequences from Miguel Mendonca with Superman specifically. And when he's doing Superman stuff, he looks amazing. This opening scene where he's got the 2 kids in his arms. Later in a dream sequence, he's holding up like the Daily Planet globe to save, you know, Jimmy Olsen, some other people. You know, it looks really cool. Specifically Superman. The other characters look good too. There's a really cool design on Hal Jordan that I liked a lot. Not the best art in the world, but it is cool. Like if this was a Superman book and this was the type of Superman action I was getting, I'd be very, very happy. But one of the big problems, it's not the biggest problem, but one of the big problems is none of these action scenes have anything to do with this story. Like this opening action scene that they show, it's just for some narration, kind of giving you Superman's state of mind. This next one, that's a dream sequence, and it does give you an idea that Superman Clark Kent has some anxiety going on because there have been some big shifts as far as his life and the Justice League. There's one more action scene that's also superfluous where Superman helps out Batman, but for the most part, the art is people talking. And there's a lot of exposition. I think that really holds back the narrative. I would have much rather seen, we'll get into those specifics when I get to that part of the review, but the art overall, pretty darn good. Not amazing or anything, but if you like Superman doing cool stuff, when you get to see it, you know, it definitely delivers. The biggest problem with this comic book is when the hell does this take place? Is it Elseworlds? Is this in the current continuity future state? It feels like it is. There's certainly events that are being talked about in this story, in the narrative, that fit right along with things that we've seen just happen or things that we've seen are going to happen when we read Future State. When Hal Jordan and a few other Lanterns visit the Watchtower to enlist the aid of the Justice League, which are no more, trying to kind of get the team back together, they're talking about how they need to rebuild the core and the United Planets have jurisdiction over large swaths of Lantern territory. We just saw that in Green Lantern number 2. Okay, so this is apparently within continuity. And then we see that there's strife between the Justice League, and they've kind of disbanded. And they're no longer working together. We saw that in the Future State Justice League. So this appears to be a little bit out in the future, in between where we are now and Future State, which we just finished a few months ago. But then when we get into the Batman story, Alfred's alive. So is this Elseworlds or is this in continuity? If it's Elseworlds, don't be tying it into things that we've already witnessed because it causes a lot of confusion. And if it's in continuity, what the hell is Alfred doing here? I shouldn't be spending so much time reading this story wondering when the hell this is happening and why so many of these events makes sense within what I'm reading right now, but then I'm seeing other things that clearly can't be this way if that's what's actually going on here. Now, is this Alfred reveal and him aiding Batman like some big plot event that's going to play out later on? I don't know, but I don't know. This could all be part of the narrative, but it's really confusing as to why we're here and what's going on. And I think that detracts from the story because you're thinking about that. At least I was. Like, when the hell am I? Now, the big event that is driving this story is essentially Lobo. The Green Lanterns have captured him. This is what I'm talking about when I say, why are we seeing these cool action sequences of things that don't matter to the story, and then we learn that Lobo killed the New Gods, and that's done off panel? Why aren't we seeing that? That sounds pretty interesting. We should probably see that event. Lobo's killed the New Gods. The Green Lanterns have pulled him in, and the new United Planet government wants to try him apparently on Earth, and they want the Justice League to keep him safe because he's got so many enemies. People are going to be coming after him and killing him, and that's essentially what's bringing the Justice League back together. And Hal Jordan, he finally arrives and he's kind of imploring them that they're wanting to rebuild the core. They need to have trust with United Planets. He's also trying to sell them that they should be turning, I guess, the Earth's moon into the new Oa. So that's kind of an interesting concept. So that's the big thing. Are the Justice League going to get back together, protect Lobo, keep him safe until his trial? That's what's moving the narrative and bringing the characters back together. But it's kind of lame that they killed off the New Gods off panel, but we're seeing dream sequences that don't really matter to the narrative, and we're seeing opening sequences that have nothing to do with actually what's going on. There's a lot of mistrust. There's something going on with the Justice League. It's clear that Batman and Superman are not on speaking terms. When Batman arrives at the Watchtower, he walks by Superman. You almost get the feeling that maybe he nudged him on the shoulder because they're not going to be talking. Then Superman, really, it's not out of character. I mean, it's out of character, but in this moment, it's not out of character. He's kind of taking him to task. These two almost feel like they hate each other at this point. And you get the feeling, and it's certainly implied, that Batman did something very, very bad. There's too much exposition. There's way too much tell and not show. Whatever happened here between Superman and Batman, they probably should have shown that instead of some of this other stuff. But when the characters interact together, it feels natural. It feels like if Batman and Superman were mad at each other, this is how they would interact. It feels like if Diana was stuck in the middle, this is kind of, this is the voice that she would have. These are the things that she would say to keep the peace. When Hal Jordan arrives, and the other Green Lanterns, they're not in Green Lantern uniforms. They still have their rings, so they're still able to wield their power rings, but it feels like something bad has happened with the Green Lantern Corps. Hal Jordan's apparently been through something. He's got, I don't know, it almost looks like his uniform is a power battery. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what I'm seeing there. But when he sees Diana, you can see he's been through some stuff, and he immediately goes and gives her a hug. He needed to see a friend at that point. So the interactions are definitely the thing that keeps the story working, even if I don't completely agree with all the narrative choices that Zdarsky uses to move the story along. Batman refuses to join up with the Justice League, work with Clark Kent, Diana Prince. He said, I got to go back to Gotham. I want nothing to do with this. And Superman knows that they need Batman, for his strategic abilities. So he goes to Gotham and aids him in stopping Mr. Freeze. And he wants to talk. And they go back to the Batcave and they kind of have a confrontation. And this is when we start learning that Batman likely did something very bad. Something that, Clark Kent, Superman, doesn't know if he can even forgive him for. They have a very good confrontation. And then maybe, I don't know if this is my favorite moment, but he punches the giant penny in the Batcave and you could see it bouncing off the wall and everything. And then we finally find out what it is that has happened here. This is what Superman says to Batman. Damn you. I tried. I did my best. It was you who killed John, Martian Manhunter. It was you who sent our friend to his death. So that's what it is. Batman made some type of decision, and Superman and possibly the other members of the Justice League blame him for the death of Martian Manhunter. And that is the crux of the conflict between the characters and the disbanding of the Justice League and the reason that they are in the situation that they are in right now. I imagine we will see this event eventually and what Batman has done, but there's so much exposition, and the only time there's action, it doesn't really have anything to do with the story that we're actually reading. It's kind of just there, so there was action, so it's not meaningful. If you don't see the things happening, you're just kind of jumping in the middle of the story. It's kind of hard for it to be impactful. Like when you find out that the new gods were killed, it doesn't really have an impact. You find out John was killed, Martian Manhunter, doesn't feel impactful. I didn't even see it happen. What's the fallout? Okay, you guys aren't friends anymore. I do think this issue will be resolved as the series moves along, but I do think it holds back this issue. That is my review of Justice League Last Ride from Chip Zdarsky and Miguel Mendonca. 3.5-star comic. I recommend it. I do think this will get better with age. This is probably more like a fine wine. And this cover is awful. If I did not mention it earlier, but this is just one of the most boring, blasé covers in the history of the world. Superman's got some anguish. They could have done better than this. Do better covers. There's nobody that's just walking through the comic shop that was aware that Justice League Last Ride existed and wasn't planning on buying it. And when they saw this cover, there's nobody that said, well, hot damn, I got to get that one. They're just going to keep going by. Now, there might be some Justice League fans that didn't know the comic was coming out. And when they saw it's Justice League, even though it has the most boring cover imaginable, I'll still buy it because I buy everything Justice League. But this kind of cover isn't putting butts in seats, you know what I mean? This isn't selling tickets. Hopefully they'll pick up their cover game in the future. And I do think this story will pick up. I have an enormous amount of faith in Chip Zdarsky. He's right behind, Robert Venditti, Peter J. Tomasi, Jeff Johns, as far as writers in the industry that I absolutely trust. Ram B would be up there as well to do a really good story essentially every time out. So I think in the end, this will all be worked out. If you're not reading Batman Urban Legends, it is a very expensive comic book, and the backup stories aren't that great, but the Chip Zdarsky story is worth your time. Don't know if it's worth your money at that price. But he's doing some good things over at DC Comics. I'm glad to see him get an opportunity there on some of these characters we haven't seen him do in the past. But there are definite problems with this, just as far as when does this line up? If it's Elseworld, why are there events that we're reading right now happening in here? If it's not Elseworld, it's in the current timeline. What's Alfred doing there? There's some inconsistencies. It causes confusion, makes you think, it breaks you right out of the story. And definitely more show than tell in the future. If they fix up those minor issues, I think that Justice League Last Ride will do just fine, and people will be very happy to not be reading Brian Michael Bendis' very terrible Justice League book and having a pretty good alternative at the moment.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.